have to figure out how DNA has been exchanged between different viruses in order to figure out how the virus has evolved.
As it were, the mother of this virus could be, I feel cheap saying this, bat, but the father could be pangolin.
Yeah, there's been a lot of discussion about that. And what we argue in this paper is, in fact, you probably don't need to invoke any transfer of DNA from the pangolin virus. And it's complicated, but that has to do with that there's another bat virus that has received DNA from yet another unknown virus. But all in all, it's all relatively compatible with a model in which the most closely related virus from bats to this human virus diverged from the human virus about 35 years ago. So about 35 years ago, there was a common ancestor from this bat virus and the human virus. And then since then, it has evolved in many different ways. There have been an accumulation of various mutations resulting in the virus that we see today.
But I suppose what I'd understood was that, okay, so you found a bat which has got a virus and its great-great-great-great-grandparents, as it were, back 35 years, is shared with the human virus now, but it could have been in unknown bats ever since, or it could have been in pangolins ever since. Give me a sense of what it's been doing in the intervening 35 years.
Yeah, that we don't know. As we analyze and getting more details, it seems less and less likely that they've been through pangolins. But of course, what else they've been doing during the last 35 years, the DNA doesn't really tell us much about that.
But it has been doing something that makes it more suitable to be in humans?
So that's right. There's certain patterns in a particular protein, the spike protein.
This is the one that binds into our cells.
Yeah, exactly. And that is very efficient. That's why it's so deadly, this virus. Because it's very efficient. It enters human cells very efficiently. So it somehow has been pre-adapted for efficacy in humans, for being very violent in humans. And why that is, we're not sure. But that doesn't mean that it couldn't be because it's in adapting in this way in another mammal than humans. So the last 35 years, we don't know what it has been doing. We can't really say for sure if it's been transferred to other mammals or what else has been going on. But there's nothing that we see in the pattern that is unusual for viral evolution that would suggest that there's anything else going on than the usual process of accumulation of new mutation, natural selection, and then the occasional transfer from one species to another species.
Well, I mean, that's very interesting because obviously you're aware of these suggestions that this is actually being genetically engineered in a lab, specifically in a lab in China, to make it infectious to humans. And I don't know whether you would be able to tell whether there were specific changes being made in a lab compared to the kinds of things that might happen in nature.
Well, we don't have any evidence that suggests that there's anything going on with this virus beyond what we see going on in viral evolution all the time. There were some early claims that maybe there were some signs that it has been manipulated in the lab. And I think that's simply a misunderstanding because people hadn't understood this process of recombination that viruses go through. So it was clear that there were some insertions in the virus. There were some segments of DNA sequences in this virus that we didn't find in another related virus. And people misunderstood this and thought it was evidence that it had been manipulated. But this is a process that happens all the time in the virus. We see this all the time.
And this is when one animal may be infected by two viruses at the same time.
So there's several different processes going on. One is when you are infected by two viral strains at the same time and they can exchange genetic material between them. And the other one is just the insertion of extra DNA that we find all the time in nature. It happens in our genome and it happens in viral genomes. There's nothing particular odious about that.
It just picks it up along the way?
Picks it up along the way, yes. And we don't always know how it happens, but we can see it happens all the time in nature.
Rasmus Nielsen. The analysis is currently an unrefereed preprint, but if he's right, and other experts have highlighted the study, human manipulation can be ruled out. But still, people have wondered why the Wuhan labs were collecting bat coronaviruses and what they were doing with them. Peter Daszak of EcoHealth has been funded by the US National Institutes of Health since 2015 to work with the Chinese scientists. Peter, first of all, what is the actual value of these collections?
Well, this isn't just stamp collecting. We don't go out there and say, oh, that's interesting, let's stick it in a lab. we're targeting viruses that are related to SARS, because at the time, prior to this outbreak, SARS was the big issue, and we thought SARS might still be out there in the wild and still have the potential to cause a pandemic. So what we do is we look at in bats, we get the genetic sequences. We don't collect the viruses, we collect the genetic code of the viruses. It's not infectious material. And we analyze that to say, could this bat have a virus that could infect people and cause a pandemic? If so, who's making contact with it? Can we reduce the risk? And can we start designing vaccines that will work against that virus as well as SARS?
So within the programme, we've been talking, for example, about this spike protein that the coronaviruses have and whether it matches bats or pangolins or possibly humans. And that's the kind of research you can do with that information.
Yeah, exactly. You really don't need to have a large collection of live viruses anymore, because from the genetic sequence of the virus, you can tell pretty clearly whether it's likely to be able to even infect people. So most of the viruses we find aren't. We don't need to do any more work on them. What we're looking for are viruses that can infect people, that are close to SARS, that could potentially cause a pandemic. It's exactly what's happened with Covid-19. That's what we've been working on for 15 years, trying to stop this happening. The sequences of the viruses are used to expand vaccines and drugs to make sure that those drugs are able to affect not only the virus we know about, but the potential other ones that are out there that could emerge in the future.
So one of the aspects of this conspiracy idea is that you were doing genetics and you were manipulating the viruses, or at least you were manipulating the genes. From what you're saying, that's actually just part of this tool of understanding, for example, the gene that makes the spike protein.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, one of the reasons scientists create these chimeric viruses, and, the word chimera, of course, is great for a conspiracy theorist. They do this so that we don't have to collect live samples and ship them around the world. It's to protect public health. So what you can do now is you can get a virus that's not risky for people, and you can put one of the spike proteins into that virus and test it in the lab to see if vaccines will work against the higher risk virus, without needing to collect it, without needing to ship it around the world. This work has already been used to test drugs against COVID-19. There's a paper in Science 2 weeks ago that describes exactly that. So, I don't understand why people are attacking the labs that are out there designing vaccines to save our lives.
One reason seems to be mistrust of the Chinese. I mean, you've been to these labs, I take it. You've met the people, you worked with the people, you've seen the facilities. You were perfectly happy to do that. You didn't have any issues when you were there.
Well, I've been working with Chinese scientists for 15 years. I do that with eyes wide open. I realise that behind all of that there is an authoritarian regime that, if you're on the wrong side of, can be pretty brutal. I've listened to everything they've said to me for 15 years. I've worked with them, I've eaten dinner with them, I've been in the lab, we've had our staff embedded in their labs. They've visited the US and Europe and other places. I've never heard anything said by anybody that in any way was suspicious or was later found out to be untruthful. These are just scientists doing their job, just like scientists all around the world. There's nothing unusual about this work at all.
And I've been looking at the work of, for example, Zhengli Shi, who I think is one of the scientists who work there, and precisely identifying the kinds of viruses, saying these are the ones we need to prepare against. It seems to me, this is precisely what we need. We're not going to protect ourselves against things like coronavirus if you're not out there doing this.
Yeah, it's quite sad, actually. I mean, for 15 years we've been saying in every single paper we publish that these bat coronaviruses are a high risk for the next pandemic. We should stop eating bats, we should close down the wildlife trade, that if we're not careful we'll see a pandemic of a bat origin coronavirus from China. Repeatedly. Zhengli said it, I've said it, and many others have said it. It's quite ironic that now the people who said that are now being accused of starting the outbreak. It's absolutely preposterous.
Lastly, as the conversation I just had with Rasmus Nielsen suggests, there's still a big mystery about what that transition was from bats into humans. I'm presuming that there may be animals, mammals within Wuhan that may have been some kind of intermediary. Is there work going on that may narrow that pathway down?
Yeah, we're funded by federal government to work with Wuhan to do exactly that work. Unfortunately, thanks to this conspiracy theory, thanks to the politicization of pandemic prevention. We're not right now communicating very well with our Chinese partners. It's holding up the work that will save lives. It's holding up the vaccine discovery that will save lives. It's exactly the wrong thing to do right now in a pandemic.
Disease hunter Peter Daszak, clearly frustrated that essential surveillance work is being deliberately misrepresented. You can hear more of his frustration if you download the extended podcast available from the Science in Action website at bbcworldservice.com, where also the library of COVID editions is steadily growing. But for now, it's goodbye from me, Ronan Pease, and producer Julian Siddle. And please stay well.
This is the BBC World Service, and on May's World Book Club, there's treachery afoot.
Hilary Mantel will be talking about her sequel to Wolf Hall, Bringing Up the Bodies. It continues the story of the rise of Thomas Cromwell and tells of his role in the downfall of Anne Boleyn. Another slice of adultery, treason and executions in the Tudor court of Henry VIII.
World Book Club with Hilary Mantel from the 2nd of May. And in 30 minutes, World Football with Manny Jasmy.
This week, former Liverpool sporting director Damien Comolli tells us that football must resume for the sake of club's very existence. And Heather O'Reilly finally gets a chance to talk about the best goal of her life.
This is the BBC World Service, the world's radio station.
Hundreds of women in Canada grow embryos into babies for couples who cannot do it for themselves. They do it for nothing, or rather for no payment. And some do it again and again.
Oh, I love it. It's just crazy that she's out in the world now. I've just created a family. Like someone else's family.
Why do these women put their bodies through this?
I love pregnancy. My tubes are tied, so I don't want any more. So it's just a feeling that I'm able to produce something for somebody who couldn't have this any other way.
How do their own children and husbands feel about it?
My children are proud of me. They said that my surrogacy taught them a lot about what it's like to give something to someone.
How do they just keep the child away at birth? Join me, Valeria Perazo, for the Surrogates Club after the news.
Hello, I'm Tom Watts with the BBC News. The Trump administration has promoted sunlight as a powerful tool in the fight against the coronavirus. At a White House briefing, the head of science at the Department of Homeland Security, Bill Bryan, said studies had shown the virus died quickly in direct sunlight. Here's David Willis.
Early in this crisis, President Trump predicted that the coronavirus would be gone by the summer. And at the daily White House briefing, he touted the results of U.S. government research, which may lead credence to that claim. Officials in the U.S. Department of Homeland Security have determined that the virus dies more rapidly when exposed to sunlight and humidity, although they caution that their studies are still at an early stage. At the same briefing, the Vice President, Mike Pence, expressed the hope that the pandemic would begin to recede as the summer approaches.
The U.S. House of Representatives has passed a fourth coronavirus relief bill worth more than $480 billion. President Trump has promised to sign it into law quickly. The bill will expand federal government loans to small businesses and hospitals overwhelmed by COVID-19 patients. The Democratic Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, said traditionally excluded sectors would benefit from the bill.
$60 billion in a set-aside for, shall we say, the underbanked, the women, minorities, veterans, Native Americans, rural folks, people who didn't have big banking relationships but had big credit needs. Another $60 billion in loans and grants for small businesses. And then $100 billion for hospitals and testing. Quite a remarkable feat.
The governor of New York State, Andrew Cuomo, says initial survey results indicate that about 14% of residents may have already contracted the coronavirus and that 1 in 200 of those subsequently died. Mr. Cuomo said the findings suggested the virus was less deadly than feared and would help determine how he would relax the lockdown in New York, the worst affected U.S. state. The South African President, Cyril Ramaphosa, has said a 5-week nationwide coronavirus lockdown will start to be eased next month. In a televised address, Mr. Ramaphosa said that after April the 13th, some economic activity would be allowed to resume, but the approach would be deliberate and cautious.
While a nationwide lockdown is probably the most effective means to contain the spread of the virus, it cannot be sustained indefinitely. We must avoid a rushed reopening that could risk a spread which would need to be followed by another hard lockdown.
World News from the BBC. There's been violent unrest in Venezuela as people broke a strict quarantine in several states to protest against food and petrol shortages. A man was killed and at least 6 injured during clashes with police in Bolivar state as hundreds of people looted a local supermarket. In several other states, drivers protested against petrol shortages. Indonesia is temporarily shutting down airports and banning flights to prevent people flying into and out of the country. The restrictions come into force on Friday and will last until the 1st of June. Public transport within the country by land, sea and air is also severely restricted. The travel ban does not apply to high-ranking officials or international organisations. One of the most anticipated annual events in the US sporting world is taking place virtually this year because of the coronavirus pandemic. The 2020 National Football League draft had been scheduled to take place in Las Vegas. More details from Alex Capstick.
In normal times, the NFL draft had become a glitzy, tense, exciting occasion played out in front of thousands of fans, not only at the venue chosen to stage the event, but also at bars and parties across the United States. This year's spectacle was originally scheduled for the Las Vegas Strip near Caesars Palace. Instead, deals are being done remotely, with the league's commissioner Roger Goodell announcing the picks from a basement in New York. The lockdown means general managers from the 32 franchises are lodging all bids from their homes. With contracts worth millions of dollars on the line, they were encouraged to ensure there are no glitches in the technology.
The World Health Organization has prematurely posted information that a closely watched experimental drug to treat severe cases of Covid-19 has failed to benefit patients undergoing trials in China. Gilead Sciences, the US maker of remdesivir, said the WHO had not been granted permission to release the partial findings. BBC News.
Oh my God, is it good to push? Oh, you gotta push? I don't know. Get it out.
A delivery room in Ontario, Canada.
That's it. Oh my goodness. Yeah. Wow, beautiful. Good work.
Sorry. Marisa is worried as the newborn fails to cry. But others here may be even more worried than her, the baby's parents.
There we go.
Because Marisa is delivering a baby that is not her own. She's a surrogate mother in Canada where women have babies for strangers for free.
Oh, I love it. It's just crazy that she's out in the world now after creating a family. Like someone else's family.
A surrogate mother carries someone else's child. Canadian law gives that child and the couple who supplied the embryo to the surrogate rights. They are the legal parents. Their name is on the birth certificate. The surrogate simply gives away the baby at birth, and with it, any parental rights at all. This program is about why any woman would do such a thing.
Hey, hot mama.
I first meet Marisa earlier in her pregnancy at a surrogate's retreat. And Valeria Perazo come with me and spend time with her and many others like her at the Surrogates Club.
We think 60 surrogates who are going to come and spend the weekend with us, sharing in this beautiful sisterhood that we've created together. Come on in.
Leah Swanberg is the owner of a surrogacy agency in Canada and a former surrogate herself. Her job? to help surrogates match with intended parents, or IPs, as they are called in surrogacy jargon. Parents-to-be, who come to Canada from all over the world looking for ways to grow a family.
Now together, let's all take 3 deep breaths.
My name is Marcia. I'm here because I am a surrogate. I'm 35 weeks pregnant with a little girl. Back in 2016, I was very down and low, and I just wanted to bring light. So my very good friend Kara, she knew I loved being pregnant, and so she's like, why don't you try surrogacy? So I decided to sign on, and it went fairly quickly. It is 2 gentlemen that I'm having for. It's their baby, it's not mine, so it's very nice that way.
Marisa is now in her first journey, as surrogates call it, pregnant with an embryo that was created in a fertility clinic and implanted into her womb, made with the eggs of an egg donor and the sperm of a couple from Spain.
For me, I think it's just bringing that light back in. I'm helping a family that wouldn't normally be a family, have a family. So I'm creating not just a child for these gentlemen, but I'm also creating a legacy.
Crawling and creeping.
I'm Janet. I have 5 children, and I'm pregnant again, and the baby's not even mine.
Janet has already been there, done that.
This is my second surrogacy journey. I signed up in January 2017, and we were matched about 2 weeks after I signed up for 2 guys again. These guys were in France. Amazing, amazing fathers, which they have a beautiful little girl now. Just had her in May 2018. The whole pregnancy was amazing. I was super sick. I was super sick for the first couple months, but it's definitely worth it. I'm doing it again, so now I'm on journey number 2.
Janet had her first surrogate baby in May. 3 months later, she is pregnant again.
I knew right away that I wanted to do another one. And I was introduced to the second set of IPs when I was only a few months pregnant with my first surrogate baby. We talked, me and the second set of IPs, we talked, and I'm like, okay, let's go for it. I love being pregnant, so why not? My body heals well. I was fine after a few days after having a baby. You would never even know I was pregnant. So it's just something I wanted to do, and I'll do it again.
They not only do it multiple times, they are also not in it for the money. Unlike what happens in many other countries, surrogacy in Canada is altruistic. It is legal, as long as women do not get a financial gain out of it. Marisa.
I would never do this as a job. I wouldn't do it just because I'm getting paid. I don't feel like that's beneficial to anything. You're not a baby machine, rent to womb, or whatever they call it. I see a lot of American surrogates. They get paid $60,000, $120,000 just to get pregnant. Where in Canada, we don't do that.
In neighboring US, surrogates get paid a fee. Here, they do get some money, but only for expenses.
They reimburse you for your pregnancy-related expenses. So in your contracts, you set out a certain amount of dollars per month that you're allowed to reimburse. You need to have a receipt for everything. So like food, meds, because I was really sick, they pay for lost wages, stuff like that. But it's only for me, so it's not for my family. It's anything that I would incur.
Why do they do it then? This is the question for me. I just want to find out why women from all walks of life choose to offer their time and put their bodies at potential risk to carry someone else's baby.
The reason why I've always wanted to be a surrogate is because it's been really, really easy for us to have children, and I can't imagine life without having them. I love pregnancy. My tubes are tied, so it's just a feeling that I'm able to produce something for somebody who couldn't have this any other way.
This wasn't about me. Yes, I love being pregnant, but at the end of the day, this is about them being a family.
It was also a very selfish reason. I took a lot out of this myself, and I felt I needed to do something that was bigger than myself.
I'm proud. I'm very proud that I'm able to carry this child for somebody.
And demand is fueled by rising infertility. Statistics show that worldwide 50 million couples who want children can't have them without medical help. Leah Swanberg's surrogacy agency is a part of this growth.
Just about 11 years ago, we had 8 babies born in our first year, and in the last month, we've had over 30 babies born. Right now, we have just over 500 active surrogates in our program, but again, in our first year, we had, 10 surrogates.
Canada's altruistic model makes it more ethically acceptable for some, and also a lot cheaper, half of what it would cost over in the US.
The intended parents will pay us for our services once they have a surrogate in place. So from there, we will manage the entire process to ensure that their surrogates are being reimbursed appropriately for their expenses. And generally, they're struggling with really trying to develop more of a rapport or relationship with their surrogate. We're available to coach them on this new relationship that is so deeply intimate, but is basically with a stranger.
Strangers. That's what intended parents are when these women decide to carry a baby for them.
All right. See the pocket? Here.
A regular afternoon at Janet's house. Her 5 kids, a cat and a dog running around, and a Skype call with her intended parents.
Hello.
Hey,
Good. How are you guys?
Not bad. Yeah.
What are you guys up to today?
2 fathers for the second surrogate baby she's carrying.
10 weeks, boys. 10 weeks. And we're going to find out the sex of this baby. That's a boy. With my first journey, my IPs, the intended parents, were from France. So with that, I only seen them twice throughout the whole process. And this time around, my IPs are from Montreal, which is just as amazing. Like, they can come more often because they are closer, which is nice because it's nice to see them, right? They've been asking when we can get together, and I want your kids to come over. You guys can all come down. We'll take them swimming. We'll do this with them. We'll do that with them.
But not all surrogates' experiences are the same.
Here we go. 6, 2, 1, 2.
Genevieve is a cello player with an orchestra. A teacher, mother of 3, and first-time surrogate.
So I chose a single father, and that's partly why I chose him, because he is a single father. And for some reason in my head that really hit close to me, because they really don't have an option. My challenges are that he knows that he's anxious, and I'm not at all. And I struggle with helping people that are anxious.
Things didn't go exactly as planned.
Having his anxiety, because I've had to think about it so much and to protect his feelings, at times that has annoyed me, I have to say.
What's it? What's it?
I'm mostly worried about my children. They're not going to see the baby much afterwards, and especially my daughter's talking about it so much. She talks about holding the baby, and I said, it's not our baby. I can't control if you're going to be allowed to see the baby or hold the baby. I can't make the father let her see the baby and things like that.
You have a million babies.
Hi, Gabby.
Hi. Hi.
We're just talking about the baby.
Okay.
Okay. Are we keeping the baby afterwards?
No.
No. Are we going to give the baby to his daddy?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because we don't want 4 children.
Why don't we want 4 children?
Because 4 children is a lot.
Do you want to see the baby afterwards?
Yes.
Yes. Well, what happens if his daddy doesn't want us to see the baby afterwards? Could that happen?
Yeah.
Yeah, it could happen.
Yeah, it's a
I think talking to other surrogates has just been the support of other people going through the same thing that I am. So there are other surrogates that have different relationships, and knowing that I'm not being mean or I'm not being selfish by not wanting to talk to him all the time, because that's something that I really felt that maybe I was not giving him what he needed by saying that I need more space. And that has helped me the most, I think, by knowing that it's okay that I need that space.
Yeah, so we alternate births of 14.
Back at the retreat, The sisterhood is in place to help each other deal with the journey's hurdles. Because things can go wrong. Things did go wrong for Marisa.
With my other two, they were easy pregnancies. This one, I do have a PICC line because I have hyperemesis. It's morning sickness on steroids. I've been hospitalized twice because of it, but I know, like, my partner, it's been really straining on him because he's had to see me in the hospital and he's had to kind of pick up my slack. He just doesn't understand why I'm doing this. I live in a very small town, so I received a lot of negatives. You know, how could you give up that baby? You're giving up your life for your family life, and it's 9 months. And essentially just telling people, it's your body, it's your choice. There shouldn't be anyone that dictates what you do to your body. You know, if you want to do it, you need to do it for yourself and not let anyone else tell you what to do, essentially. Your body, your choice.
And so I would encourage you guys to really think about how this could apply to your life. How letting go of things that are holding you back, you know, fear of failure, you know, that is holding you back, I would encourage you to...
This is probably the most emotional moment of the surrogates retreat, in which they all get to write their worries on a piece of paper that they then throw onto a fire pit to see their fears eaten away by the fire. They are all sitting in a circle around the fire, and there's lots of hugging and crying.
So are you. I got you.
Marisa was there by the fire.
So, one of my biggest supporters was my mom, and she just passed away on Wednesday. She's been the one that's, you know, told me to keep going, and even though I've had negative criticism, she was right there for me. So having her gone, it's definitely hard, but that's kind of why I had to come today, because I needed to kind of still honor her.
The criticism that Marisa received in her small hometown is common. There are a host of critics around the world clamoring to regulate or even ban surrogacy. For some, it is seen as a form of exploitation of the female body akin to prostitution.
In some ways, I think comparing surrogacy and sex work is appropriate insofar as you have two forms of embodied labor that people are selling.
Katie Fulfer is a professor at the University of Waterloo in Ontario who has been studying surrogacy in Canada.
Just because we have unpaid surrogacy doesn't mean there's no exploitation. And sometimes a surrogate might be treated as valuable more for what she's doing for the intended parents than she is for being a unique person. I think that this problem could show up in either unpaid or paid surrogacy.
Even within an altruistic model, surrogacy is an expensive business for intended parents that may end up spending up to $75,000. Surrogates may only get reimbursed for expenses, while everybody else gets paid a fee.
In Canada, fertility is a for-profit industry. So doctors are being paid, lawyers are being paid, agents are being paid. Why isn't the surrogate being paid?
1, 2, 3.
Money issues aside, the time spent at the retreats has taught me two things. That altruistic surrogates bond in a tight-knit community, yes. And that everyone seems to agree on the question they get asked most.
And people always ask me, people are always like, what's it like giving a baby away? People always use that term because it's not...
People always ask
They don't
me that too.
understand the mindset.
Well, yeah, I've already had people be like, well, how can you do this? How can you just give this baby? I'm going in.
Yes, I asked them that too. And almost every surrogate rolled her eyes and gave me the exact same answer.
For me, I think I've always been in the mindset that I know it's not my baby.
It never was mine.
It never was mine to give up.
This is not my baby. I was very aware there's no DNA to me, and I was just holding her.
It feels a little bit like babysitting, but with love.
People that would be like, well, you're really going to give this baby up. And it's like, I always took that opportunity to educate people. It was never mine in the first place.
It is not my egg. It is not my husband's sperm. That's okay. This is my choice, and I'm okay with my choice. My family is okay with my choice. And I'm sorry that you can't wrap your little tiny brain around this awesome experience. Come on.
Back to the delivery room at the top of the program.
Big cries. Come on.
Yeah. After 16 hours of labor, Marisa has given birth to a surrogate baby girl.
The hair. That is the most hair that I've had in the womb.
The baby's parents, Julio and Jesus, stand by her bed. Marisa got to meet them for the first time just days before the birth.
Yeah. It's so beautiful. It's your girl. Malena. Girl.
I had everyone there, you know, as I'm giving birth and everything's exposed. You don't even realize that you're completely naked to people that you just met face to face. But you don't think of that in the moment. It's just kind of like it just melts away. And at first I was a little worried because I was like, why are you having to rub her to cry? Like, why is she not crying? And then they put her up on me. I could see by then that she was actually okay. She just wasn't a crying baby.
Turn your tongue down and nail down. I'm going to just take that just for a second.
Okay.
All you have to do is just slowly, just give her a second.
So when I started the process with Jesus and Julio, I made sure, you know, I wanted to make sure that this experience is all revolving around them, where my birth is all around me. So you don't think of yourself because, you know, yeah, I'm giving birth and everything else, but I mean, I'm already a parent. You're making brand new parents. So I really wanted to make sure that I asked, like, have you guys thought about who's going to do the skin to skin? Like, I don't want to do the skin to skin because it's not my baby. You guys should have that first bond. I've had her for the last almost 10 months. It's your turn now.
Julio cut the cord.
I cut it, and then he did skin to skin.
Just seeing the guys like light up with this little girl, like, I don't know how to explain it. It was just like, oh my God, I just made a family. When they left the hospital, Marisa went back home to her family. Julio and Jesus, with baby Malena, stayed in an apartment nearby for 6 weeks before flying home to Spain. This is just overnight pump, which my colostrum is still coming, so I'm going to take that down to them and they'll mix it with their formula or give it to her like this and then give her formula.
So the plan is that you're staying involved with her feeding for the time that they stay here.
We had talked about it in length about, you know, do you want me to breastfeed? Do you want me to pump? And they felt, you know, it's better if I just pump because A, the baby won't have to get confused with, you know, well, no, I only want the breast, not the bottle. And B, that connection, you know, it helps me with my emotional, mental health. So that's what we've been doing. Oh, baby. Oh, looks like maybe you are hungry right now, actually.
Well, we don't know. She seems to be, but when we give her the bottle, she doesn't.
She's still
not really well.
Well, I have colostrum. That may change.
Thank you. Yeah.
So how my family is adjusting. I know at the retreat I had spoke about my fiance not being very supportive. He's really struggled with this process, you know, worrying about me and, you know, seeing me in pain. He didn't want to see me in pain, and he's kind of feeling left out because my attention is elsewhere and he wants all the attention, essentially. My kids, on the other hand, love it. They think the world of her, they think the world of the guys, and they realize it's not our baby, but that they're going to be part of our life for a very long time.
So I said so first.
She chose him apparently.
I spy with my little eye. We don't think that.
Esto es que es muy difícil de explicar.
How do we feel?
It's so difficult to explain. Not just because I have this incredible gift of a daughter, but also because we share this experience with her dad, her kids. I'm overwhelmed.
Realmente estoy abrumado. Hey, ¿qué quieres comer?
Surrogates often stay in touch with the parents and the child they carried for years to come.
So over the next couple months and even years, I hope that, I know life gets busy because, like, I have friends that live the next town over and I don't even see or talk to them for weeks or months on end. So I know, like, we'll probably go through periods of time where maybe we don't hear from each other. But I think in the end, like, we will always be connected, and we plan on going over to Spain, and they said that they want us to take trips to Canada and visit. So I think, we're going to be lifelong bonded, and they want to make sure, like, she knows where she came from, and, we're family now, essentially.
This is the BBC World Service, looking up at the sky.
For 10 days, the Hubble Space Telescope looked at a patch of sky where we knew virtually nothing existed, and yet at the end of that time, 3,000 new galaxies had been discovered.
The Hubble Space Telescope has transformed our view of the universe, orbiting around 500 kilometers above us. When it first looked out into space and captured its first image, the results were astounding.
The amazing Hubble images, the way they show the universe in this vivid technicolor detail, that stimulates all of our imaginations. I think it's impossible to overstate the importance of the impact that Hubble has had.
Join me, Sue Nelson, to celebrate 30 years of Hubble's achievements.
Window on the universe at bbcworldservice.com.
Hello, I'm Manny Jasmine, and on this week's World Football, the former Liverpool and Fenerbahce sporting director Damien Comolli tells us that regardless of the many big challenges facing the resumption of leagues, football seasons must continue for the sake of clubs' very existence. And the Brescia and Finland midfielder Simon Skrab talks about his 7 weeks of lockdown in Italy. Join Heather O'Reilly, Pat Nevin and me for World Football after the BBC News.
BBC News. New research promoted by the Trump administration suggests that sunlight can be a powerful weapon against the coronavirus. The head of science at the Department of Homeland Security, Bill Bryan, told reporters at the White House that the virus weakened more quickly when exposed to sunlight, heat and humidity. The study has not yet been made public or subjected to external examination. The U.S. House of Representatives has passed a fourth coronavirus relief bill worth more than $480 billion. The bill will expand federal government loans to small businesses impacted by the pandemic and hospitals overwhelmed by COVID-19 patients. It will also provide more funds for testing suspected infections. The South African President, Cyril Ramaphosa, has said a 5-week national coronavirus lockdown will start to be eased next month. In a televised address, Mr. Ramaphosa said after April the 13th, some economic activity would be allowed to resume, but the approach would be cautious. There's been violent unrest in Venezuela as people broke a strict quarantine in several states to protest against food and petrol shortages. A man was killed and at least 6 injured during clashes with police in Bolivar state as hundreds of people looted a local supermarket. The World Health Organization has prematurely posted information that a closely watched experimental drug to treat severe cases of COVID-19 has failed to benefit patients undergoing clinical trials in China. Gilead Sciences, the US maker of remdesivir, said the WHO had not been granted permission to release the partial findings, which it said had now been removed. Tens of thousands of Hong Kong teenagers are sitting postponed university entrance exams as the authorities ease restrictions following a second wave of coronavirus infections. They will either observe strict social distancing in an exam room or take the tests online. BBC News.
Every country has got a national animal. You know, kangaroo for Australia, all that sort of thing, you know. Do you know what Scotland is? I discovered it just a couple of days ago.
Well, you know this program's called World Football, not World...
I know.
National animals.
But the reason it's such a brilliant
national animal of Scotland.
Scotland. It's a unicorn.
Leading the conversation on the global game. This is World Football on the BBC.